morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. This will be like a TED conference. We're going to keep the speakers on time, and we're just going to let them know that they have to follow the 3 Bs. Be bright, be brief, be gone. Andrew Lowe is going to provide some perspectives between Ireland and the United States. Please welcome Andrew Lowe.
Good morning. All right, well, it looks like I'm first up and here to get everybody fired up for liberty today. So it's really a blessing for me to be here. I'm from a little town back home in the north of Ireland called Ballyclare, and it's truly God's grace that I'm over here now and able to speak to a wonderful crowd like this about my learnings of liberty and the American ideals. So I just want to first of all give you a little information about what it was like for me growing up in Northern Ireland. We have a population there now of about 1.8 million approximately. So it's really a small country. We call it the wee country. And I'm from sort of the Ulster Scots heritage, which I know had a prominent, important role in the founding of this country. And as I've been here and read and learn more about it, it really has been inspirational for me. And so I just want to share some more about that a little later. But my growing up, I actually was a child of a policeman. So I grew up in a policing family in Belfast. And you can imagine through the 70s and 80s, that was quite a dangerous family to be living in. And we, for example, my father would always have us wait while we returned to our car. He would always check underneath if there was any explosives. And I want to just tell you a little bit about an incident where some folks had planted a bomb in the home of a policeman with his family there, and they called in the report to notify everyone that this bomb had been planted, as they did. And so this scramble of emergency responders to get to this home, to this gentleman, to try and save his wife and kids, emergency services headed there. My father was also in the response team, and what they would do is set up what they call an incident control point, where they would basically control the firefighters, the police, the bomb disposal and whatnot from this point. And what they didn't realize was that the same people who had planted this bomb had realized that they could predict where this incident control point would be. And so my father just happened to be about 20 feet from a secondary explosive device that had been planted right there. And so he was talking to a superior officer. An explosion went off behind him, and all around him started raining little white pellets. And what it was are little fertilizer pellets which were used to make the bomb, and the detonator had gone off. It failed to detonate the full bomb. Instead, it blew the material over my father and his colleagues. And he returned to the barracks that night, took off his hat, and he said his hat was just covered in white powder. And he thanked God for preserving him. And so I'm thankful that I'm able to be here and talking to you today. So then there's another part of that I want to share that I feel is interesting, since I've learned more here about liberty and whatnot. There's a political party back home called Sinn Féin, and they are actively seeking to unite Ireland as one nation, a 32 county. On their website, you can go there and check it out. They're advocating for a 32 county socialist republic. And now that I'm here in America, my learnings and the ideals of liberty that I've learned, they now supersede any of my origins back home about one side or the other, because really the ideas of liberty are so much greater than any of the troubles back home. It's so much more important, and I feel so much more beneficial for both sides of that divide, and maybe one day I can go back there and teach people a little bit more about that. So I also then just want to tell you a little about my schooling, as I grew up in a nice government school in Ballyclare. I had a great history teacher. I loved history, and his name was Paul Macaulay. Still remember him. And I remember the day when we were learning about the history of Ireland and Britain, and the greatest achievement in the history of Britain, we were taught, was the foundation of the National Health Service. And I was trying to be a good student. Oh, I'll take that down. Right, okay. And I still remember that to this day, because there's no teachings, no concept of this principle of liberty like we have here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And so, as I then went through, I actually became a teacher, and I taught in a school in Belfast, an inner city school. And it was really a very interesting experience. I want to tell you a story about one of the guys I taught. He was about 17 years old. I'll call him Brian in this story. And so it was a hard school. It took a few months for the kids to warm up, and Brian came to me one day after class and said, "Sir, I got to tell you, you know what's going on," because he was struggling getting some papers done and whatnot. He said, "Sir, I have an 18-month-old son, and you know, I'm trying my best. I'm working part-time jobs to try and pay a little bit of the child support to the child's mother." He says, "Sir, I met her at a party. One thing led to another. I wasn't really that interested, but this child came along, and the situation was such that he had to have a paternity test. And so he told me he had this vision. He was in the doctor's room waiting for these results, and he had a vision the doctor would come out and say, 'Brian, it's okay, son, it's not yours.' He says the door swung open. The doctor says, 'Brian, it's yours.'" And I only tell you that because what he then told me was, you know, the little girls here in Belfast, the babies to them are worth their weight in gold, because when they have a baby and no husband, they go straight to the top of the housing provider list. So it's a recognized way for young girls back home to get social housing, is to have a child when they're young out of wedlock. And you know, that's unfortunately what we're going to be facing here in the United States also. And so I came to America originally 2004, and just thinking Americans were crazy. I'd been educated that way. You know, Americans are crazy with their guns and no health care. And you know, kind of supportive of President Obama. I thought, you know, don't hold that against me. And so the irony of it was, I had a job and had health care. Then they passed Obamacare, and I lost my health care, which is amazing, right? And I'm thankful now I'm actually with an organization called Christian Healthcare Ministries. I don't know if you know about that, but I pay a minimal amount every month, and it's a cost-sharing program. So I've opted out, which is great. And then, you know what, there was something here in America that I couldn't put my finger on. Here I was in this foreign land, and there was something here that just attracted me. And I had come back and forth between home and here, and it really took me years to identify it, but I feel now I know it, and it's the absolute heart knowledge that people in this country have of liberty. And it's a very powerful, subtle thing that it's difficult to convey, because this country right now is not as everyone here would like to see it run. But there's this knowledge in our hearts of what liberty is, godly liberty and biblical liberty. And it's really been just wonderful for me to learn about it. And some of the people that helped me with that, there's a gentleman up in the Bay Area named Mike Winther. He has an organization called the Institute for Principal Studies. He teaches a class called Biblical Principles of Government. 10-week class I sat through. Wonderful, wonderful education. And I also had a visit a couple of weeks ago here from a missionary who works in Africa, in South Africa. He told an interesting story that I think applies to America. He said, in Africa, they have a problem because the locals there, they worship basically their dead ancestors. And he says that the spiritual blindness that they have means that they can't learn. You can't teach them logic and reason because they're so preoccupied with this spiritual blindness. And he said the only way that we can battle this spiritual blindness is with God's blessing. And that leads me into really what we need to do. And first of all is prayer. You know, we really have to pray that the Lord will open the eyes of the blinded, that he would allow the message of his truth and freedom and liberty to come into the hearts of the people that are in this country. I believe if we pray hard, that of course will happen. We also need to speak out. Too often, and I've noticed it because when coming here, I've had a bit of an outside view on things, and we're just beaten over the head so often by the forces out there. They try and make us feel that we're an extremist minority or we're on the margins, and so we need to keep our mouths shut. Otherwise, we're going to be ostracized, and people think we're crazy. It's a plan that they have put in place to make us feel that way. We must speak out because we have on our side the biblical truth and the biblical founding of this country. We have to challenge them and meet them head on. And it's really a spiritual fight. And so I encourage everyone to mentor people. You know, we can meet folks out there that maybe don't have the knowledge you do. The people in this room, I'm sure, have lots of knowledge and information, can make a difference. Mentor people, share the knowledge, educate them. Wake up the churches. We have so many silent pulpits in this country about really the biblical principles of government. They refuse to speak out on how civil government should be run and based upon information, that the truth that's in the Bible. We need to see more from the pulpit. So speak to your pastors. And so I just want to finish with a little story that I read in a book here called The Bulletproof George Washington. And some of you may have heard of this. This is a chief who wanted to meet with Washington. He waited 15 years to meet Washington after a battle that they had both been involved in. And this is what he said at a campfire meeting that he insisted was set up. I am a chief and ruler over my tribes. My influence extends to the waters of the Great Lakes and to the far blue mountains. I have traveled a long and weary path that I might see the young warrior of the great battle. It was on the day when the white man's blood mixed with the streams of our forest that I beheld this chief, indicating Washington. I called to my young men and said, "Mark yon tall and daring warrior. He is not of the redcoat tribe. He hath an Indian's wisdom, and his warriors fight as we do. Himself is alone exposed. Quick, let your aim be certain, and he dies." Our rifles were levelled, rifles which but for you knew not how to miss. 'Twas all in vain. A power mightier far than we shielded you, seeing that you were under the special guardianship of the Great Spirit. We immediately ceased to fire at you. I am old, and soon shall be gathered to the great council fire of my fathers in the land of shades. But ere I go, there is something big bids me to speak in the voice of prophecy. Listen, the Great Spirit protects that man, indicating Washington, and guides his destinies. He will become the chief of nations, and a people yet unborn will hail him as the founder of a mighty empire. I am come to pay homage to the man who is the particular favorite of heaven and who can never die in battle. And and so nowadays, an Indian chief in our society, he would be hailed as wise, and even back then they recognized Almighty God's hand protecting George Washington. And so I just want to encourage us all to return to that faith that God can communicate with even the unbeliever, and ask for his guidance, and we can restore this country. And thank you.